Well, welcome to this second edition of the Upstream Downlow. The Upstream Downlow is a brand new podcast of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I say brand new, we've done one thus far, and that was with the chairman of the Railroad Commission, Jim Wright. And so that came out maybe a month or so ago. So this is our second edition of that podcast. And again, Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, and the name of this podcast is the Upstream Downlow. And so we're pleased to have you joining us today. My name is Karr, Ingham. I'm the president of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. We are a statewide upstream oil and gas trade association, and our mission is to protect our members and our companies in the oil and gas industry in Texas from damaging legislation, regulation, tax policy, things that are harmful to the U.S. domestic oil and gas industry and the oil and gas industry in Texas in particular, and to the independent oil and gas community in Texas more specifically. So I'm very pleased today to be joined by our chairman of the board. This is Hunter Carr. And again, my first name is Carr with a K. His last name is Carr with a C. So it's kind of the Carr and Carr show, and you can decide who got listed first in that just now.
Distant cousins.
Distant cousins. That's right. Hunter is with his family company, Carr Resources, in Tyler, Texas. So a great East Texas company. And Hunter, it's good to have you with me today, and I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to have this conversation with you today and join the podcast.
Well, so just tell us a little bit about you.
Okay.
Life, family, work.
Right. So I was born and raised in Tyler and work for Carr Resources. Now I've been working for them for 10 years. I say them, it's my dad, and a good team of employees. We're a small operator out of Tyler. And but before that, kind of a classic person growing up in the oil and gas industry with a parent who's in the industry, but being raised by my dad and learning geology from an early age. And it was a great upbringing, and certainly led to my career path in some way or another. But after graduating high school, went to University of Georgia, go Dogs, and got a undergrad in geology there. And after meeting my wife Jackie in Dallas, I was working in Dallas after college and met her there, and we moved to Houston. She's an attorney and she worked for a firm there, and I had a office in Houston and continued to work for Carr Resources. And in COVID, we moved back, and it was time to get together and be in the office, and it was a good time to settle down. So we were happy to have that chapter turned, but enjoyed Houston, but we loved being in Tyler. So yeah, right now I'm the vice president of Carr Resources. I've worked for my dad for 10 years, and we've really been focused on, maybe since around COVID, been focused on drilling horizontally in tight conventionals in the Eastern Shelf mostly, in the Strawn, limestones and sandstones. But we've had some operations across Texas and some in Oklahoma. But we started out and still are a prospect generating company. We like to be on the cutting edge of prospect thinking and being there before others can. We're a small company. We need to move fast. So that's our edge. And our company motto is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. And that's our path to discovery. And that's where we try to go.
So did you go to Carr Resources straight out of college?
No, I actually worked for a oil and gas marketer, Lee Vendig, LDV Oil and Gas Consultants. Yeah, he's a great guy and a great company. And he represents, and the company represents small operators like ourselves, forms co-ops regionally, and just make sure that we're getting the best price for our barrels, whether it's going to the best purchaser in an area, making sure the terms of our contracts are the market terms of the formula are up to date with an ever-changing market cycle. It's important to have someone on your side in that regard. A lot of the larger companies obviously have in-house marketing.
Sure.
So Yeah, I started out learning the ins and outs of more of the business financial side of oil and gas, and did that for about a year and a half. And the 2014 crash happened, and my dad called me and said, "Congratulations, it's your first crash. Won't be your last."
That's
But
exactly right.
yeah, so it was a great learning experience, and Lee Vindig does a great job. So uh, I've actually seen some parallels to what marketing does, and the role that it plays, and with the alliance. But we can get to that in a little bit.
Perfect. Did your dad start this company?
He did. He moved to Tyler after getting married. My parents are both from the Dallas area. I think they moved in '78, and he worked for some companies in Tyler. And I think around '84 he went independent with a partner, and then eventually uh, went out on his own, and has been basically he's been an independent operator since about '84. But Carr Resources, as it's known today, has been since about '93.
Yeah. So you grew up oil and gas family, oil and gas childhood. You could have gone geology, you could have gone petroleum engineering, you could have gone, I don't know, accounting, name it. I mean, they're all disciplines of those are now running oil and gas companies. So are you a rock guy at heart?
I am. I guess I could say I'm a rock guy. I definitely I'm a visual learner and visual thinker, and that is beneficial to a geologist, and seeing things in the 3D and the subsurface. But I've over these 10 years come to learn that I'm also uh, have more of a business mind, and have been leaning into that more recently as vice president, and focusing on business development and fostering relationships. Uh, my dad and Rich Adams at Carr
I
Resources
know Rich.
yeah,
Yeah.
Rich has worked for John for coming up on 26 years now, since 2000. And they're a great pair of uh, business and geologic know-how, and they're great geologists in East Texas. It's been a privilege to learn under them, and hoping to carry that on.
Well, so when we knew of Carr, they've been a member of the alliance for quite some time. When I first became aware of you, it was through the East Texas Geological Society. I think I came to East Texas and spoke
Yes.
to that group.
Mhm.
And I've been back a time or two to speak to them since then, which I appreciate. But you're pretty heavily involved in that group, and maybe the Gulf Coast group as well. Anyway, I think you're pretty deep involvement in those um, not associations for lack of a better word, but the societies. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what that is. I mean, that's a group of people who come together to do something. Um, I, I think we probably thought, in addition to you just being an independent family oil and gas guy, that your involvement in those groups is probably of value to us as well. What's your history with those groups?
Yeah, thank you. Well, when I moved back to Tyler in 2020, and maybe even before that, there was an opening on the board for a social chairman. Just felt the need to get involved and help out our local society, and uh, it's a great group, the East Texas Geological Society. A lot of the men and women who have been on that board have been there for a time, and it's great to spend some time with them, and learn the history of Tyler, and from their perspective, and to make a difference there with a very independent constituency of geologists and people in the industry. But so yeah, started out as social chairman, and over the years it became my turn to become president, and I'm on my fourth and final year as president of the East Texas Geological Society, and it's been great, and we're looking forward to continuing that on. The GCAGS, the Gulf Coast Association of Geological Societies.
Right.
It's a mouthful. We are 13 Gulf Coast geological societies from Mexico City to Florida, and every year we have a conference. It's now called GeoGulf. Last year, East Texas and Shreveport co-hosted it in Nacogdoches. And as uh, the president of the ETGS at the time. It was my role to become the president of the GCAGS for that year, uh, along with Julie Bloxton, a professor at
Right.
Stephen F. Austin. She's our vice president, and she just did an incredible job planning that conference. And it got a lot of high marks from people who had gone to conferences in larger cities. But this was in Nacogdoches at SFA's campus. They have a beautiful facility, and yeah, it was a great turnout, a great conference. This coming month, we'll be having GeoGulf in Baton Rouge, and it's 3 societies of Louisiana hosting. So we've enjoyed doing that, but that was just a one-time gig, and happy to do my part there. But
Well, so how do you now find yourself the chairman of the board of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers?
well, it's partially your fault, but
It's largely my fault, which is to say I take the credit for it.
well, a friend of mine from Tyler is friends with Houston Sullivan, our past chairman,
Right.
2 chairmans ago, and I believe the board was looking for someone in East Texas, and my friend recommended me to Houston, and he gave me a call, and so I said, sure, happy to hop on the board and help where I can. But I really didn't have a full understanding of all that the Alliance does, and I've certainly learned that over the last few years. But I believe I was on the board for 1 year before you gave me a call and asked me to be vice chairman, and with the plan to become chairman. And I was happy to take on that role. And after a year or so of learning more about the Alliance, it was an easy choice and an honor to join and plan to be in this position now to help guide the Alliance with the rest of the committee and with the board and with your leadership. So,
Well, this much will be obvious to anybody watching this right now. You're a young guy. I mean, you're a young guy potentially for that kind of leadership role, but I think that's fantastic. I mean, the industry has had a reputation in recent years, and particularly with the ups and downs of the 2000s and the Great Recession and just a purging of a lot of employees in oil and gas. And then you mentioned this bloodbath of an industry downturn that started in 2014, went all the way through 2016. That was much worse than the Great Recession in terms of industry job loss and the impact on the industry,
right.
and really have not gotten back to those levels of employment rig counts. That's or other reasons for that too. But the conventional wisdom became that the industry is not attracting young people. It's not attracting young talent. The aging talent is aging out of the industry and retiring and going away. I don't see now. I mean, we've got a lot of great member companies. They've got a lot of great young employees. So that's not really my sense at this stage of the game that the industry is not attracting young people to it. It's professional. It's exciting. It's innovative. There's always something fun and interesting going on. It's very challenging, I would think, to young professionals coming out of school. And you're not a rookie. You didn't just graduate from college, but again, yeah, I mean, you're a young guy for the role that you're in. And I don't know if I have a question around that or not, but what's your sense of industry makeup now in terms of age? All old people, all younger people, healthy mix.
Right. Well, there's definitely like you said, a gap between uh, the boomer generation and our generation. I think a lot of that is due to the really tough years from the mid 80s, even all the way through the 90s. And wasn't very attractive to become a geologist or to go into the industry because it just was a tough industry. And, we're a commodity industry, and it's cyclical, just like any other. So, when I went to Georgia, our undergrad program, I think, grew from maybe 40 undergrads to over 100 in the time from freshman to senior. and that was in the shale boom of
Right.
09 to 13. And yeah, there's certainly some 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 yes, there's certainly some issues with demographics, but we've got a lot of young talent that I continue to see at conferences, and I continue to get to know at colleges like SFA. A lot of great students that come out, but one issue is, not call it an issue. It's an efficiency, as you know, is uh, people are able to do more uh, with technology, with computers. Field offices are not as vital, and so you can be in one office in a major city and control a lot of your assets across the country in a larger capacity. So that's one thing. But also, a lot of the geologists that have come out and wanting to get a good job usually go to a larger company, and that's great. It's a good way to go. But with the shale boom, a lot of geologists and more so engineers have been focused on drilling shale and maximizing that endeavor. And we can kind of try to read the tea leaves, and there's certainly seems to be an underinvestment in exploration geology. And as prime locations in Haynesville and other places, the Permian, there will be a uh, there will be a premium for exploration, and that will possibly create a pinch point where you're going to have a lot of young geologists like myself who could end up being in their 40s and 50s and don't know how to really develop a vertical prospect or a non-shale prospect. And so I'm concerned about that in a longer term. But we're innovators by heart, and we'll make it happen. But yeah, it's not something that is going to cause a lot of issues to the survival of our industry, but we've certainly been battling a lot of headwinds in the media for many years, longer than I've been alive, really. And it's what's the new crisis of the decade. But that is, I think, with so much information that is out there, this, call it climate alarmism, this political agenda that's being pushed as a existential crisis is not panning out as the way it's been said, and people are waking up to that. And so it's still there's still plenty of work to do, and we've got to power the world, and that's not going away.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, what has in part changed that narrative about climate alarmism is just energy realism and affordability, which has really become uh, a, a a buzz concept over the last couple of years, and even post COVID when Russia invaded Ukraine, crude oil prices shot up, but of affordability, availability of energy, certainly in the U.S., but increasingly abroad, where our global neighbors, a great many of those still exist in energy poverty, and it's there's just no doubt about the fact that the U.S. domestic oil and gas industry has grown their provision of energy resources to our global neighbors, continue to do so through these incredible markets, incredible technology, LNG,
Right.
for sure. Um, so I agree with that, but from the standpoint of your company and the kind of company that you are, I mean, if you're a member of the alliance and you're an oil and gas guy, you know what these terms mean. But there are majors who are very big companies that are integrated. They produce, they market, they refine, they do all of these things. And then there are independents whose job it is to bring that stuff to the surface and then sell it. Some of those are great big and they're publicly traded. And then there are private independent oil and gas companies who are not publicly traded, less well known. And then there are smaller private independent oil and gas companies whose names probably most people out there in the even in Texas probably don't know. you guys and your family company fall into that category. The Permian Basin, the huge companies, they get a lot of attention about the volume of crude oil and natural gas being produced. That's where that's the shiny bloom on the rose right now. But
Right.
what I mean, how would you characterize being a small, private, family, independent oil and gas company in the great state of Texas, where all the rest of this is going on to?
It's of course, being in Texas really is a blessing. I think and a lot of people do think it's the best state in the country and the best country in the world, and especially for oil and gas, and for energy independence as a whole. But uh, like you said, independents range from single operators who's even they own a ranch or a farm and they have some stripper wells, to a company like ours that's less than 10 employees, but we've made a few million barrels in the last 5 or 6 years. And you've got independents like Mewburn who compete with majors, and so there's really, as you know, independent is a large word, but it is a blessing to be able to own a company and operate a company in this state, and know that when our barrels come out of the ground, it's coming out in an environment that is peaceful and generally pro business. And yeah, I think that's a great part. I kind of lost your question a little bit.
Well, no, you hit it on the nose actually, but as a smaller private independent, I didn't know any employees you had, but that's fascinating to me. Um, and those few million barrels, clearly market for those, which means there's clearly a spot in this environment, in this ecosystem for that company and other independents, private independents, smaller independents. They can sell every barrel they pull out of the ground. Um, um, but it's a different economic environment, or at least it seems to me as though it is, which means increasing costs of regulation, however they occur, either in DC or at the state level, or a change in tax policy or something that changes the economics of it, causes revenue to have to go somewhere other than back into exploration or something like
Right.
that, and to meeting regulatory challenges. Is that how much different is that in a small private independent relative to larger guys?
Yeah. Well, as a smaller company, every variable change is has an effect. Larger companies can absorb blows in different ways, but and good, as I was mentioning earlier with LDV, my former employer, when your oil, you as a geologist, you work so hard to find this oil, from the creative aspect of prospecting to the working with engineers and the technology it takes, which is incredible and really underappreciated in the grand scheme of things. But to get that oil to the surface, and when it comes out, an operator that doesn't have someone representing their marketing, you could be getting $3, $4 a barrel less than your neighbor who has some type of marketer that's representing you and making sure you're getting the right price. Uh, in a similar cut, the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers make sure that when our oil comes to the surface, it's coming out in an environment that is beneficial and is not overregulated. I'd much rather produce a barrel in Texas than I would in California. And the Railroad Commission has done a good job of that, but it is constantly a balance with the way the political winds change, and it just takes constant attention, just like marketing does. When we have things that are more political hitting us, yeah, it affects us if we're more burdened with uh, monitoring or regulations, redundant rules. It For a small company, it takes up time. It takes up financial capex. So yeah, every hurdle is not something that is lightly stepped over. So it's great that we have these large companies that produce a majority of our oil, but uh, there's a huge slice of the pie in Texas that are small operators that make their contribution and support their families and their communities with the oil that they produce and the gas that they produce.
Well, said it many times. The Permian is what it is. It's the big dog on the block, and it is impressive. And what's been accomplished out there is impressive. And as well as I do, there are a lot of independents operating out there as well.
Sure.
But in the rest of Texas, probably, most of the wells are being operated by independent oil and gas companies, probably private independent oil and gas companies. And along with those, in Tyler and the Panhandle, in North Texas and West Central Texas, South Texas, along with every one of those wells comes beneficial economic activity. You're paying people, employees, contractors. You're paying royalties and working interest to those folks. You're paying local ad valorem taxes to school districts and municipalities. Your name's on the back of the Little League team. You're buying steers at the stock show. This is the fabric of a lot of the state of Texas. I mean, we've got agriculture, a huge part of the state, and ranching. These two things go hand in hand, I think. But these oil and gas companies, as well as they operate all over, and it is all over Texas, by the way, just such a unique part of the community and the fabric of the community. And as well as I do, that we as the Alliance and me as its president, we jealously guard these things. Don't have any interest in those companies going away or those wells being shut in. How would you characterize all those things I just said, your community involvement and what that looks like in not a major metro area, and in East Texas?
Well, yeah, it's certainly Tyler was not founded, but really grew and had a large boom in industry in the discovery of the East Texas oil
Right.
field. And the field was generally below the city of Kilgore. Palestine was a main resource for service, a main location for service companies, and Tyler was really the financial center of the field. And if I know you're a history buff, and a lot of people know, but the East Texas oil field helped us win World War II. Winston
Right.
Churchill tipped his hat to that, and so we've got a long history of oil and gas heritage that still echoes today. I, for instance, went to a private school in Tyler, and our football field was built and dedicated by Mr. Curtis Mewberry.
Mm-hmm.
And so you still have people who are not even in the industry anymore, but their families have been. And it's certainly aided to the growth of Tyler. And I know we're not the only city that is like that. And now we're more or less the capital of East Texas. We've got an incredible financial center, a medical center. We've much more diversified our industries,
Sure.
but the heritage is still there. And so yeah, we try to do our part just like any other person that cares for their community. But even in West Texas, in our drilling in Scurry County, we had one of our royalty owners ask my father to make a contribution to the local children's cattle association, and it wasn't anything large, but he gave that, and our mailbox was full of thank you notes from kids
Fantastic.
with pictures with their cows and sheep and pigs. And so it was really great to see some what a small thing can mean to a lot of people. And yeah, I'm proud to be a part of that in some small way.
Nothing I don't love about that story right there. So you did a 2-year stint as vice chairman of the board, and you did some stuff with us then. You made a DC trip. You at least one, and
Yes, for the inauguration.
sure. And you've been to Austin. I mean, you've kind of been working your way towards this. You became chair of the board on January 1. And again, a 2-year hitch as chairman. What are your goals for the Alliance from your vantage point, from the board standpoint and your chairmanship over
Right.
your tenure?
As we've discussed, and along with the rest of our executive committee, Clayton Scott, our vice chairman, and Chris Humpert, our secretary, we've really focused this year on developing our membership. We've got a great membership base so far, from, like you said, large public companies all the way down to single members. And we want to continue growing that in this legislative off year, even though we're still very involved with the rulemaking processes from last legislation. But being vice chairman last year, and it was certainly an interesting legislative session, and that was eye-opening to me to see how much goes on that the public doesn't know about. Not necessarily, it's just there's just constant chatter and going back and forth about drafts, and that's just how politics works. But to see how people can call on us to be a voice, to be a testimony, to really have meaningful impact on laws and rules. You testified multiple times, and so that was really great to see. And then aside from legislation, the visit to DC and meeting with new representatives and senators' offices, that was great to be a part of those conversations and see a little bit about how DC works. Asterisks, but I hadn't been to DC since my 8th grade field trip with our school, so it was nice to see that and be there for the inauguration. That was really special. And but coming back to Texas, this year we're focused on membership. We want to grow our members as much as possible, because every added voice that we have makes a louder voice for everyone. And we're sitting here, and there are many companies that are not members, but we're fighting for them as well, just by our love for the industry and what they do, regardless of if they're a member or not. But it's really meaningful to see where our budget goes and how we help to make a difference, and having events like the luncheon we just came from to support our members and give them updates, but also look and meet new possible members. So yeah, that's our goal this year, and I know that you're going to do a great job at that. But yeah, we don't want to be, especially as independents, someone that is ignored by the political sector of our state and of our country. So I was thinking about this on the way over. I'm a bit of a visual person, but if you're walking out in West Texas and you see a cactus, you can walk around it and not have to deal with it. But sometimes you come to a field of cacti and you've got to be careful going through it. And if we can, each operator, be someone that is not willing to put up with overburdensome regulation, and if we can be a group, that's something that needs to be respected and honored. So, not to be a thorn in the side, but to be an independent and to be represented.
Listen, we've got to be there. We've got to be in the room. They have to know who we are, and we have to establish and maintain a working relationship in those environments with a lot of people, including the members themselves of House and Senate, state and federal, but their staff, committee staff, commission staff, regulatory staff. I mean, and the commissioners themselves, obviously, but that's exactly what it is. And it is strength in numbers. There's no doubt about this, but it's strength in dollars too, because it takes resources to do this.
Sure.
And so I'm all on board that membership train, and we're gonna move those numbers to the north in 2026, and appreciate your and the board's interest in this. So you've been to DC. You're gonna get some more of that in 2026 and 2027. I think we've got an April trip scheduled
Yes, we do.
up there. And I think we may be the only state oil and gas trade association that has our own DC lobbyist. This would be the great Chris Kearney, whom you know. And so we've always been engaged in DC, and we've always made trips there, and we've always worked on, my goodness, I spent a lot of time there in 2017 during tax reform, which turned out well for us, and other things. So I would say we probably exist first and foremost, and certainly historically that's been the case. The Alliance has existed to do work in Texas at the state level, but a lot happens in terms of oil and gas at the federal level. So from your standpoint, I mean, how important or impactful is the federal government on oil and gas and smaller independents, most especially?
Well, I mean, we're still dealing with the echoes of the Biden administration, and the smallest operators we're usually the last ones to, when the rule gets to us, it's a big game of telephone from the decision in DC, and what looks a little virtue signaling in DC and not really thought through about how it will be done. And again, that's how politics works. Make a directive and you give it to the next agency down and to implement it. But we're dealing with some echoes from Biden's administration in the Quad OB and the Quad OC of methane emission regulations, and how financially cumbersome that could have been and could be. The Trump administration and the EPA kind of put a hold on that to reassess, but we were preparing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per location for regulatory inspections, for equipment that are called vapor recovery units to put on tanks. But we are not in the business of leaking methane, something that we like to sell for revenue. So we have no interest to be frivolous with our resources. So it's certainly been something that we need to focus on. And even in Austin, with rules that come out and come through the commission, if we're not careful, in some instances, things can go sideways quickly, and we've seen that almost happen. But yeah, we always need to keep a pulse on what's going on in DC. It's vital to be as upstream as possible to these issues.
Well, 2025 last year, interesting. Well, I don't know if there's ever not an interesting market year for oil and gas, which always something interesting, fascinating, maybe good, maybe bad going on in oil and gas markets and commodity markets and prices. 2025 was an interesting year, and not a great way. Prices were lower for crude oil, particularly compared to 2024. Brought some challenges. We continue to grow production, and if we thought 2025 was interesting, well, here we come with 2026. So not in very recent history, we've had two massive global geopolitical events: Venezuela, where we blow in and overturn an oppressive authoritarian regime. I don't know. Most people in America think that they should have been around. Whether that was good or bad, it happened.
It happened.
And I think there's something to be said for liberating 300 billion barrels of oil to be put to use ultimately by the global economy. But I certainly do know some producers, and some smaller producers in particular, who aren't, at least at the moment, interested in another barrel coming onto the marketplace. It might push prices down. You and I haven't really talked about this, but how do you and how does the company look at those kinds of events?
Right. Yeah. The recent geopolitical issues have certainly sent shockwaves through the world and through the markets. It's Trump is I support a lot of his policies, and as you know, with his, I think in general his tariff policy is started to rebalance some long lived issues of trade imbalances. But for us, it is pretty hard on us with steel tariffs and service prices going up. But back to the geopolitics. Yes, there is theoretically, and there is a lot of oil in Venezuela, but when people see it on the news, they think, "Oh, here it comes." But
Right.
we're a long way off from having some real meaningful production to affect the global balance. But it is coming if all things continue to go the way Trump has intended it to go. That's not to say 5 years down the road, maybe with a new president, things or a new regime in Venezuela. It's the line of sight of predictability in the oil and gas market has drastically shortened. And back in 2014, and that crash made sense. It was a game of chicken between the Saudis and us, more or less. But yeah, it is very hard, and there's a lot of variables going on across the world. But uh, a lot of our refineries were originally built to take the Venezuelan
Right.
heavy crude, and then we started producing out of the Permian sweet crude, and we turned those around and started exporting, and then LNGs also, which have been a great benefit to, like you said, our neighbors in Europe and across the world. But yeah, things like Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, that is going to continue to have an effect, and it's tough to say how long this is really going to last right now. I mean, it's the the cannonball into the pool just happened, so we're not sure how big this
Right.
splash is going to be. But yeah, if 20% of the LNG from Qatar and 20% of oil and gas, more or less, that comes out of that region is halted every day, there is a shortage. And I have a friend in the oil and gas commodities business, and he was talking a couple months ago about, man, we're really just about $2 million or 2 million barrels a day oversupplied, and if that can be fixed, this depressed oil prices can really repair themselves pretty quickly. Well, we're now about 20 million barrels a day of our 100 million a day demand short. So we'll see how much it causes an effect. But uh, also, if Iran starts to attack facilities over people with their drones, that could cause long term damage and structural damage to the industry. So we'll see. But before all of that happened, going back to Trump and his policies, as you know, he's really pushed for a decrease in the price of oil, and therefore decreasing the price of gas and diesel, and that comes from a good place in his heart. But his tax cut effectively for everyday Americans. But there is certainly a trade off, and certainly costs to a large industry that is arguably the backbone, or one of the main backbones of the country and of the world. So yeah, it's not been as volatile. It's been pressure. We haven't seen as much up and down volatility, but it has been trending down, as you can see, and so we'll see where it goes. But it should be an interesting
Well,
year.
this much is true. Crude oil prices are set globally. Global geopolitical events affect crude oil prices, but they affect them much less than they used to when our supply was not as high as it is now.
Right.
And these kinds of events that used to be much more impactful and added much more volatility to the marketplace, maybe spiked prices up considerably more than they have now, at least so far. I mean, we'll see where this goes. But back when, back even pre-Great Recession, when the U.S. was producing, 5, 6 million barrels a day, to now, in the neighborhood of 13 million barrels a day. I think it's safe to say that the U.S. has been responsible for adding so much to global supply that we're a little bit, um, we have a little bit of a buffer on these events now.
Sure.
And even as prices were falling off in 2025, our production was still maintaining that record or near record level around 13 million barrels a day. And now it's maybe fallen off a little bit, but not spectacularly. The point being, U.S. domestic oil and gas producers, led by Texas, have continued to supply the marketplace. And we continue to enjoy the luxury to where, again, we can almost take it for granted. It costs more. But is there any doubt in anybody's mind when they roll up to a gas pump and they put the card in and they pull out the nozzle and stick it in and squeeze that handle, something's going to come out. It's going to be there.
Right.
This is what has been done for us. We import much less than we used to. And I have such a great appreciation for this. Companies large and small have made this happen. And you and your compadres around Texas, big and little, have done this. Again, the criticism of the industry is frustrating to me. I assume it is to an oil and gas guy as well. Do you just take this in stride? I mean, mostly what companies have done, I mean, oil and gas people in Texas, just get up and do the work every day. But now, we have more to pay attention to, from the climate narrative to uh, a desire, certainly previously during the previous administration, to do damage to the oil and gas industry, it seems. I mean, how do you take all this in stride? I mean, really, you have to get up and do the work every day, I suppose.
Yeah, at a certain point, control or focus on what you can control, and don't let what you can't control drive you crazy. You've got to wake up and, like you said, do the work, because people rely on it, and it's a meaningful industry. But you know the bad politics. I'm sorry, the bad media, the bad PR. Uh, Adults, I feel, are um, to a point where they understand that everything that is in and around their world is built by or brought to them by oil and gas. And we can't just focus on negatives when there's so much benefit that comes from this. And uh, the climate alarmism stuff has really been more focused on, or I see the risk is more focused on our younger people, who are deterred away from pursuing careers in oil and gas, from even from an oil and gas attorney all the way down to a pumper. So there's so many different ways to be a part of this industry, and the overall continued pressure. Yeah, that could, I see, and we've seen it in colleges. We've seen um, lower programs, lower headcounts in programs for students. So it's all market fluctuations, but at the end of the day, uh, this is what I'm here to do, and uh, I'm going to do the best I can at doing it. But it's really important that we as an industry also don't keep our blinders on and go and do what's in our leases and focus on that. We really need to push back on that a bit, and bring common sense to the conversation. And I think there's been a bit of an awakening of that recently, but it needs to continue.
So if somebody were to ask me, which they have, what is it that I love about my trade, which is economics, and my profession, which is running this great organization, the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, that's an easy question for me to answer, and it'd take an hour or two for me to do it. What do you love about this industry? And then more specifically, I mean, what excites you most about getting up every day and going to work at Carr Resources?
Man, what excites me about the industry is, well, there's a few things. It is so awesome to be able to provide something to the world that helps power this podcast, makes the lenses of these cameras, allows the phones or TVs that are watching this to be made. That's a practical sense. And we're also, as Dr. Scott Tinker likes to say, we're bringing the world out of poverty, and it's true. That's happening in developing countries all across the world, and that's global poverty has been in a decline for years because of the oil and gas industry. But also just the community, the people. You know, we just had the NAPE conference in Houston last month, and it's
Right.
people who are in this industry are really the ones who care, and it's great people, it's great friendships, it's great business relations. But yeah, when it comes to myself and at Carr Resources, uh, being raised by a geologist and a businessman, it's kind of in my blood. But I've also got a great relationship with my dad, and it's great to go to work with him and learn from him, and just to make a difference in our small way. But that's the story for a lot of family businesses across the industry and in other industries. But it's to be able to come home at the end of the day and hug my kids and be able to provide for them, but to provide for an industry that's providing for the world. It's great.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed working with you thus far as vice chairman,
Likewise.
and your short time so far as chairman of the board. And we got nearly 2 full years ahead of us, and look forward to accomplishing things on behalf of our members in the oil and gas industry in particular. Enjoyed getting to know you. Hunter's an interesting guy. He's a funny guy. He's a movie buff. He's a lots of things that I am. So we find a lot to talk about. And again, I've enjoyed our working relationship thus far, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
Well, thank you for having me. Could say the same back to you. It's been I was part of the group that made the decision to hire you, and
I'm eternally grateful.
yeah, with our well, you were already had a foot in the door with helping us out, but it was an easy decision that Jason Herrick, our last chairman, led, and we're really privileged to have you leading the alliance. And yeah, I look forward to working with you. Let's make some progress.
Appreciate the kind words. Well, we could do this for another couple or 3 hours, I expect, but we won't subject you to that. I appreciate you joining us today for this edition of the Upstream Downlow, the brand new podcast of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers.